Daily Words of God. The work of the last days breaks with all rules, and regardless of whether you are cursed or punished, as long as you help my work and are of benefit to the work of conquest today, and regardless of whether you are a descendant of Moab or the progeny of the great red dragon, as long as you could perform the duty of a creature of God in this stage of work and do the best you can, then the due effect will be achieved. You are the progeny of the great red dragon, and you are a descendant of Moab. In sum, all who are of flesh and blood are the creatures of God and were made by the Creator. You are a creature of God. You should not have any choice, and this is your duty. Of course, today the Creator's work is directed at the entire universe. Regardless of who you are descended from, above all, you are one of God's creatures. You, the descendants of Moab, are part of God's creatures, with the only difference being that you are of lower worth. Since today, God's work is carried out amongst all creatures and aimed at the entire universe, the Creator is free to select any people, matters, or things in order to do His work. He cares not who you used to be descended from, as long as you are one of His creatures, and as long as you are beneficial to His work, the work of conquest and testimony, He will carry out His work in you without any hesitation. This shatters people's traditional notions, which are that God will never work among the Gentiles, especially not those who have been cursed and are lowly. For those who have been cursed, all future generations that come from them will forever also be cursed, with never any chance of salvation. God will never descend and work in a Gentile land, and will never set foot in a land of filth, for He is holy. All these notions have been shattered by God's work in the last days. Know that God is the God of all creatures. He holds dominion over the heavens and earth and all things, and is not only the God of the people of Israel. Thus, this work in China is of the utmost significance, and will it not be spread among all nations? The great testimony of the future will not be limited to China. If God only conquered you, could the demons be convinced? They do not understand being conquered, or the great power of God, and only when God's chosen people throughout the whole universe behold the ultimate effects of this work will all creatures be conquered. None are more backward or corrupt than the descendants of Moab. Only if these people can be conquered, they who are the most corrupt, who did not acknowledge God or believe that there is a God, have been conquered, and acknowledge God in their mouths, praise Him, and are able to love Him. Will this be the testimony of conquest? Although you are not Peter, you live out the image of Peter. You are able to possess the testimony of Peter and of Job, and this is the greatest testimony. Ultimately, you will say, "We are not the Israelites, but the forsaken descendants of Moab. We are not Peter, whose caliber we are incapable of, nor Job, and we can't even compare to Paul's resolve to suffer for God and dedicate himself to God. And we are so backward, and thus we are unqualified to enjoy God's blessings. God has still lifted us up today, so we must satisfy God. And although we are of insufficient caliber or qualifications, we are willing to satisfy God. We have this resolve. We are the descendants of Moab, and we were cursed. This was decreed by God, and we are incapable of changing it. But our living out and our knowledge can change, and we are resolved to satisfy God. When you have this resolve, it will prove that you have testified to being conquered.